Welcome to a regal episode of From the Horsebox. I'm Claire.
And I'm Kate. It's been a while since we recorded together, so it's very exciting to be back.
We would like to think Her Majesty the Queen would enjoy this Platinum Jubilee episode in her honour, as it comes from the horse world.
In this episode, we take a flyby with some of our country characters who've been lucky enough to have royal connections. Mark Dollar, Robert Walker and Pete Hockenhull tell us about their links with Her Majesty. We refer to them as our three wise men.
Although she is known for her sense of duty and devotion to service, she often seems most relaxed and happy with her horses and riding them still. And Mark, Robert and Pete can give us a glimpse of the private person.
Celebrating the Platinum Jubilee, I'm chatting to Major Mark Dollar, who was in the Blues and Royals from 1997 to 2006, when he performed many ceremonial duties for Her Majesty. Tell us, Mark, what it's like to be behind the scenes at the Trooping of the Colour.
It's a real privilege to be part of the Trooping of the Colour, which obviously is an annual celebration of the Queen's official birthday in June every year. It takes a huge amount of organisation. I was fortunate to be part of it, both on parade on one occasion, and then had perhaps the misfortune of organising the Household Cavalry contingent on the second occasion. But it was a great fun day and a huge amount of work went into it.
So how many sort of full run-throughs would you have?
Well, the season for the Household Cavalry starts pretty early in the year. The horses come in sort of January, February and start to get ready for the season that really runs from sort of middle of May through to the end of June. When it comes to the trooping, we've obviously done a whole load of rehearsals within the barracks, in the riding school and in the royal parks, often being drilled by the riding master on our horse skills and sword skills. But when it comes to the actual parade, there are 3 rehearsals before the actual day. The first one, which happens on a Thursday, is what we describe as the early morning rehearsal, which happens in my day very, very early in the morning. But once Transport for London got very upset that London had come to a grinding halt, it then got changed. I think now it is in the very early, sort of in the middle of the night. And then there are 2 further rehearsals on the Saturdays leading up to the event. The first one being the Major General's review, where the Major General of the Household Division inspects the troops. The second one is the Colonel's review, where one of the colonels of one of the Foot Guard battalions takes the parade, and that can often be a member of the royal family. This year it was the Duke of Cambridge. And then the third occasion of the full parade is obviously the actual day itself.
And how are the horses allocated?
So for the Household Cavalry, or if I take the parade itself, the horses really split down into various different groupings. So the first one is you have the Royal Mews. The Royal Mews is managed through Buckingham Palace, and they are all the horses that support the carriages that take Her Majesty and the royal family down to Horse Guards on the day. Then there's the Household Cavalry. The Household Cavalry is split into 2 regiments, the Life Guards and the Blues and Royals. And each of the regiments has 3 troops of effectively 30 horses. 30 horses and 30 men. And if you can go back into history, that was the formations that the cavalry years gone by operated on. So each troop will have a series of horses. The Household Cavalry has slightly the misfortune of really being only able to have black horses and some white horses and some greys, which makes selection quite difficult. But the horses are ranging from they're all Irish draft from Ireland. Some of them are more sporty than others, and then we have some very heavy horses that carry the heavier members, shall I say, of the regiment. And then, depending upon the weight of the individuals within each troop, horses are allocated. The officers have the chargers. They are still black, but they're usually of a slightly better quality, and they go through a slightly different set of training for the day.
Is there a height?
No. There was one after I left. I think there was one who was 18.2 or even 19 hands. I can't remember what his name was. So no height restriction. But the chargers, as I say, go through a slightly different set of training, and they are allocated to officers, and they have different tack for them rather than for everybody else. The trumpeters have the greys. And in the old days, they were great because they were easily recognisable on the battlefield. And each of the field officers has a trumpeter, and the same with the band. The band is allocated horses. The mass bands or household cavalry band is allocated horses depending on those who probably are somewhat calmer and somewhat slightly older. Bear in mind, the majority of band members don't have any hands to use to steer or stop. And then, of course, there are the drum horses. And the drum horses are all owned by Her Majesty.
Can I just interject? We know about this because in our previous podcast, for the listeners that are regulars, we've interviewed someone who has produced 2 of the band horses.
Oh, very good.
No reins at all for them.
And often, certainly when I was organising it, they were the most worrying because obviously, as I said, no hands and often young horses. But and then finally, you had on parade, you have the King Street Royal Horse Artillery, who obviously have very different horses to pull the guns, a multitude of colours, albeit predominantly bay. But they're really your groupings of horses on the day.
And tell us about Her Majesty's horse that obviously, when she rode, it was side saddle.
Yes, Her Majesty rode, I couldn't tell you how many years she rode, and she took great pride in riding on parade. And I think it's worth noting before that actually not only does the Household Cavalry perform a ceremonial role, and still to this day, its role is that of protection. And that's always considered very important by Her Majesty, especially when it came to the ever-changing challenges of the terrorist threat. But she had a horse called Burmese. That was probably the most famous, and she rode that on side saddle. And if I'm right, I think she was riding that on the occasion where there was the potential threat to her life with the starting gun. And I think as videos and the films of the day, the horse was very calm and so was she. And the parade went on.
Yeah, well, they certainly protected her that day. So that was very much her horse, was it?
Yes, they are. I couldn't tell you how it was bred. Whether it was one of hers, I doubt it. I would imagine it would have been found for her probably through the Crown Equerry and the Royal Mews. But very much that would have been remained in the stables in the Mews. It was not part of the ceremonial contingent that the Household Cavalry or the Household Division had. Albeit nowadays, a number of the horses that the Royal Colonels ride are those managed by the Household Division, which has a smaller stable in Knightsbridge, which is for the Foot Guards.
I do feel it must have been pretty nerve-wracking this year, especially sort of after the COVID break. Despite endless practicing, you can never recreate that atmosphere of the crowds. And I mean, they were amazing, the horses this year, just to take that.
Yes, it's always a problem. And I think this goes back to time when I was trying to organise it rather than ride on it. And that was always the concern. But yes, this year, obviously, having several years where crowds were not there. And that's why so much time goes into training in the Royal Parks in Hyde Park. And running up past the Serpentine, one tries to put crowds with banners and various other things and bands making as much noise, especially for the younger horses that the remounts that have come across from Ireland and probably entering their first season and would never have seen this. So no, I think it's phenomenal. As well as I say, also with the bigger warriors, often with the young drum horses, because often they've never seen this before. But no, I think they did amazingly well.
Yes, it reminds me of Michael Young in eventing. He gets the villagers in, I think, with a pint of beer to prepare his horse for the crowds. So, thinking about your uniform, you obviously had a bit of help with yours. Tell us, I mean, that's a mission in itself.
The soldiers and the regiment take great pride in their uniform. And for those who see it on television, it's more uncomfortable than it looks. But yes, so for the officers, we're very fortunate because we invariably have other things to do as well. And in my old job, I used to sometimes have to change dress 7 times a day. But we have an orderly who very kindly helps us with our kit. But in terms of preparation, the boots, they are not patent leather. They're made by Schneider, very thick leather. They're waxed. So they are hard as your table. And they can take up to sort of 5 or 6 hours to prepare for parade, especially as if you're riding alongside somebody beforehand and you get them scratched. So they take a lot of time. Then you have your cuirasses, which are you'll go on the front of your chest and your back. And all of this uniform relates back to the Peninsular Campaign to protect the heavy cavalry as it charged into battle. But the cuirasses, yes, there's plenty of brasso that goes on through them. And then the helmets and the plumes, which take a great deal of time. And then the swords. And so for some of the boys before the parade, that can take 12 to 15 hours to prepare, conscious that some of them would have had to use it several days before. So it's a continual process. And then there's the horses, and they take a significant amount of time as well, to the point that the shoes are often brassoed at the front of the clenches. And then all of the white is chalked. And really, they're all inspected before parade. And really what you're looking for is the clear definition between the black and the white, if there be any white. So it takes a great deal of time. And there was a few years ago where the Ministry of Defence tried to pilot patent leather boots, because they were obviously permanently shiny. However, that did not go down very well.
Well, let's hope, for Mrs. Dollar's sake, you're not still having 7 changes of clothing a day. Bringing the tone down slightly, what happens to all the horse poo?
Well, that's a very good question, Miss Jeff. I wasn't sure. So yes, it gets collected after there are a number of road sweepers that go down, and as you say, there's a lot of muck. And I think probably, as you say, it will probably go to Buckingham Palace onto Her Majesty's roses. Very good place for it. Which is
why they are so beautiful. And you celebrate when it's all over?
There's often a big sigh of relief once you've done the march, go past Buckingham Palace to finish and take the salute. You ride slowly back down Constitution Hill and up through Hyde Park to the barracks, where there is a formal dismount. Horses are put away, and then there's a big sigh of relief. For the officers, there's usually a photograph, and then, as you say, there's a nice big long lunch. That's once all the horses are away, being fed. And at the same time, there's also a change of the guard going on at the time. So the regiment continues long after that's finished.
And the horses have their well-deserved break after that.
Yes. So usually after the ceremonial season, and unless there are any particular visits that the royal family or Her Majesty take later in the season, usually the horses start to have some time off from beginning of June or middle of June through, and they rotate them through and then start bringing them up, usually in my day for the state opening of Parliament, which was in October. And we're talking the regiment operates circa around 200, 250 horses. Certainly when we did the Golden Jubilee 20 years ago, I think we put over 250 horses out that day. So there are quite a few, and they're all dotted around. We have some in Melton Mowbray, we have some at the saddle clubs around the country, and then we have a number in the training wing at Windsor, preparing the next generation of soldiers to come through.
Now, finally, I have to ask, have you personally met Her Majesty?
I've been very fortunate that, yes, I mean, Her Majesty used to come to the barracks regularly, and it was always very nice to see her. And she has always been a huge support to the regiment and the Household Division, and as Colonel-in-Chief to the British Army as a whole. And then I was very fortunate. I used to play polo and used to come across her a little bit there.
Mark, it's been fascinating to have a glimpse of behind the ceremonial scenes. The attention to detail is what makes Britain so unique. Such special memories for you, which I'm sure you will always treasure. And thank you for sharing them with us.
Thank you very much.
A big thank you to Robert Walker for agreeing to chat to From the Horse Box this morning at his yard in Cheshire. And he's been specially chosen for our Jubilee edition, but we'll get round to that in a minute. Now, Rob, are you having a busy week?
This time of the year, it's slightly manic. We call it the crazy time of the year because we're just travelling around the country from show to show. The Horse of the Year shows, qualifiers have all started. The county show circuit started. And it's a really enjoyable time of the year, but also not a lot of sleep and long days.
Yes, well, thank you again. But you could say that you were one of the top guns of the showing world. And I've had a little look. 46 Hoys victories, is it?
Yes.
And some on the same day. Is that you, or is that all the family? It was Sarah, Sam, and Izzy.
Well, I always when we work out how many winners we've had, I do it as a yard as a whole, even if it's some of the ones we've produced for clients or Izzy, Sam, and Sarah. You know, we count that all in as one, really.
It's
incredible. It's been very lucky to us. Very lucky to us.
So it's show hunters, hacks, cobs, show ponies.
Yeah,
Have I missed anything else?
Riding horses. Yeah,
Riding horses.
Yeah.
And you're also a favourite of the Horse and Hound. I don't know what they'd do without you, because it's quite hard to find an edition without you being on the front cover.
As my friend sent me a picture the other day when we were in, he said there must be shorts of loo roll if the. But anyway, not to worry. They asked me quite a few years ago, actually, when I was first of all in the Mastership for Cheshire Hounds, would I join the correspondence team out for the Horse and Hound? And at that time, we were too busy. Mm-hmm. And anyway, I started it about 3 years ago. It's very enjoyable. It's sometimes controversial. You got to talk about things and issues in the sport, and it's a.
So it is something you enjoyed.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Now, there is an adage, and I'm thinking really of the Windsor Horse Show for a context, to keep yourself in the best company and your horse in the worst.
Yeah.
How does that work at Windsor when you're competing in there?
Windsor is, along with the Royal International, possibly the Great Yorkshire and the Horse of the Year, it's they're one-off shows. You're showing against the best of the best. And as it should be at championship shows, you wouldn't expect to go to Cheltenham and have an easy run, would you? And that's how it should be. You go in there expecting for all the top horses to be there, and it's good, because I suppose nowadays with the expense of travelling your horse and things, most shows people pick and choose where they go nowadays. So the classic rings aren't full of horses every show. But at the big ones, people make the effort and save the monies and go there with the horses. So it's great.
Well, we're just, after the Windsor Horse Show, the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. How do you cope with competing against the Queen?
Do you know what? I see it as when the Queen comes to watch, because she always comes down to watch her horses. And, I used to think, oh gosh, is the judge going to favour the Queen's horse? But I think if they ever did, she would find that terribly insulting. I mean, anybody that's ever met the Queen or listened to her talk about horses, she's a very passionate and a very knowledgeable horsewoman. And I think if she got higher up the line than she should do, she would find that a real insult.
Yeah, so she's a proper competitor.
Yeah, she is, and a tremendous horsewoman. And I think when she's there, it gives you that little bit extra drive. You want to do your best in front of the Queen. I mean, anybody that's passionate about the royal family, like most Brits are, it's great to have her watching. Great to have her there.
So how do you think the judges cope? I know that's a different perspective than you, but how do you think the judges cope?
I've seen one or two lose their. You can tell they get nervous.
Yeah.
I have seen them in the ring before. Gosh, years and years ago at that show, the Royal Windsor Horse Show. She was brought into the ring as a guest to be introduced to the judges. Her horse was down the line. It came up to win. Then it was champion.
Oh gosh! Yeah.
Ironically, but anyway, there we are. Maybe the judge thought she was going to go to the tower for the evening if she didn't. But I mean, I say you can see. I think just having her around the show, it gives such a buzz.
Yes,
and it's the one show that's going to happen each year. It'll be a terrible, sad day that she's not there, because. Yeah. I know going into this year, and she hadn't been to many functions, we were all thinking, oh, I hope she goes. Of course she was going to be there. She was there most days, and it's amazing to see her. So
was there any different atmosphere this time than normal, or was it just as...
No, I mean, I think the only thing that was disappointing for us national competitors this year is that stabling-wise, we couldn't stable on the showground. So for us, from travelling from the north, you could only be there for the day, and which is normally the fun of Windsor was stopping overnight, going into Windsor or going and watching the evening performances. But I can understand it. It's not very often that you're going to have a 70-year Jubilee.
That was just a one-off?
It was a one-off because they had, I think, over 300 horses from all over the world that were stabling there for the Queen's Jubilee. And at the end of the day, it's her garden.
Yeah.
don't
Did you see
her.
any of the gallop through the history pageant?
Do you know what? I saw a few of them exercising, but because it was in the evening after we'd left the show, I saw it on the Sunday evening on TV, and I thought it was just fantastic. You know, you could see how delighted the Queen was when she saw her little fell pony come into the ring. I mean, that was to see her I mean, she was getting. Perhaps she was getting a bit bored with some of it, looking back in history. But when her ponies came in, you could see what it meant to her,
pleasure.
and she almost leapt out of the seat. So it was fantastic.
Are any of those ceremonial horses anywhere near show standard?
You often get the Queen. There's an awful lot of breeding, and obviously there's I know Katie. Jeremy Hunnable, she rides the Queen's horses in the ring of the type of horse we show, and the generally horses that she's bred, or there's a mountie horse that came from the Canadian government to the Queen, and Katie's shown that for part of its education, or ones that maybe then go on an event with Zara, and also, you know, she's done wonders for the ROR. That after the finish racing, they also now come into showing there, and it doesn't matter whether it's a fell pony, Highland, or the racehorse classes. You can see she gets genuine thrill from seeing those horses, what they can achieve in the ring, and it might not be the best horse. But let's say it's done its best to finish fourth. She gets pleasure out of that, it's just amazing to see that she gets pleasure out of them all.
Have you met the Queen?
Yeah, we have.
What happened there?
A few years back, the collecting ring was being cleared. So obviously, I think it was the Mountain and Moorland ponies were in. And you got the impression, well, it was because the Queen was coming down. Mr. Brooks, who was the chief steward, said to me, "Oh, it's okay, Rob, if you just stand to the side by the commentary box. You'd be okay there." And so I was just stood watching the class, and the Queen sure enough came and stood maybe 10, 15 yards away from me with her horseman. And then I heard my son Sam's name mentioned, and across he came to us and said, "Oh, Robert, would Sam like to come and meet the Queen?" That'd be fantastic. But just remember, he must bow and good morning, Mom. So Sam went through this, and he went across. He practiced it, and he went across to meet the Queen. He was only about 11, I think, and he did the biggest bow. He nearly headbutted her feet. It was the biggest bow I've ever seen. And she was, although for a lady that was still watching her own pony in the ring, and we were interrupting her day, she was amazing. She was, "So Sam, have you got your pony here? And tell me all about it." And then called me across, and I went to have a chat with her, and she was just generally really, really nice. And I know full well she probably had another 101 things going on in her mind, but for those 5 minutes that she gave up to us, she was brilliant. And it's a moment I keep saying to Sam, you should never forget that day. Luckily, each year on people's timeline on Facebook, it comes up of remember that day, and it's a great memory to have. And you know, we can always say I met her.
Best environment, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, I'm rather surprised that Tom Cruise got the narrating job for the King's Troop section. Did they not know you were a naval?
Yeah. No, well, I'm sure. I think people, as my wife said, at least he looks good for his age. So yeah, yeah. I really don't like Tom Cruise of late. His new film, it seems to be. Yeah.
Have you seen it?
Yes, I have, and it was amazing, pretty intense, and I have to say, I thought it was better than the first one. But I'm not a big film expert, but it was really good. So yeah.
Well, that would be. I'll have to get a photograph in the minute. I'll be in your sunglasses.
No. Tell me what.
Have you got a joke or a motto that you might entertain the judges with?
A joke or a motto.
I've seen you having a little joke with the judges in downtime.
Yeah, I think you. I've always of the opinion there's always another day, And as much as you sometimes want to scowl and get cross in the ring, there's no point. And until you just got to keep smiling. And bear in mind, most people, when they're in there, they're giving up their time, the judges. Free time. All right, there's the odd bad judge who get through the assessment far too easy, maybe, who shouldn't be on there. And that's annoying. But most are on there, they give it the free time, through goodwill. And so you have a bit of banter with them. And, it's always nice to, wind them up about maybe the horse's age, or if you think my dad always taught me that basically a horse is always a year younger until it's 9, and then it never gets any older. And so, but then bloody Horse and Hound, they're quite good at printing the horse's age nowadays. So poor old Viewpoint last year, it was a big thing about him being 10-year-old, and I'm thinking, crikey, I've been lying for years. Now I can't lie any longer. So
well, he's got a huge record.
Yeah, so it's just trying to lighten the moment, because
there's always another show.
Yeah, there is, and it is about having fun. And if you don't remember that bit, it's a very long day. So,
well, thank you ever so much, Rob.
Yeah.
That's
You're
great
welcome.
to chat to you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We are recording today on Sunday the 19th of June, 1 week after Queen Elizabeth II officially became the world's second longest reigning monarch ever. Her Majesty overtakes the King of Thailand, who reigned for 70 years and 126 days. The longest reigning monarch was Louis XIV of France, who remained on the throne for 72 years and 110 days. Sorry, I do like a stat. But today I'm celebrating with our final guest, Peter Hockenhull, who together with his wife Emma own and run Shade Oak Stud near Ellesmere in Shropshire. Racing is the sport of kings and queens, and at Shade Oak you currently have the stallion Dartmouth standing, owned by Her Majesty. Tell us how this came about, Pete.
We always are looking for prospective young sires, and he came to our attention whilst running. He won the Hardwick Stakes, which is quite a notable Group 2 mile-and-a-half contest. We'd already got Telescope, who won the same race, funny enough, 2 years earlier. And I approached John Warren at a TBA function and asked him whether Queen would be interested in standing him at Shade Oak. We always have to have a little bit of an edge. And I realised that Dartmouth was a gift to the Queen from Sheikh Mohammed. And I thought that perhaps the Queen wouldn't want to sell a gift, it not being the done thing, and that perhaps the best way to acquire the stallion was to ask if she would stand it at Shade Oak.
How long did it take before he arrived here?
It wasn't that long, actually. Months, I think, rather than... often these games can play out over years. But this was relatively short, and I think he was here by November of that year.
How exciting. So you've had him for nearly 5 years now. I imagine Her Majesty takes a keen interest in him and his progeny.
Well, she supported Dartmouth, and to the point that actually his first runner was bred by the Queen, which she has. She called it Naval College. It's an interesting thing. I do believe the Queen met Prince Philip at Dartmouth.
Oh, how romantic.
He was at the Naval College there, so that's where they met. So it is quite romantic. Yes, at the moment, Naval College is running really, really well, but sadly been beaten second twice in his last 2 runs. It would have been fantastic. He was entered for Royal Ascot, but sadly withdrawn at the last minute. But that would have been fantastic if Dartmouth had a runner at Royal Ascot. But there we are.
Oh, well, let's hope he does the job soon. How many mares does Dartmouth get?
I suppose around 60 to 80 has been his norm, which isn't a vast number in comparison. And he has been sort of slightly outshone by Telescope. But fashion within the industry has a way of turning and twisting. And I do think at the moment, the whole Dubawi sire line is very much an in vogue thing to have. And I do believe that going forward, his probably his lack of exposure could be his ace card in that he's unexposed. And I feel that his best days are yet to come.
Does he ever go back to Sandringham for a holiday?
No.
He's always here.
No, he stays here. He has his holidays at Shade Oak.
Well, life at Shade Oak is a permanent holiday. I know you're very, very busy. So in 2019, you won the Queen Mother's Silver Salver, which is another of your royal connections. Tell us about that.
It was very much a surprise. It's award presented by the TBA for persons involved and contributing towards British breeding. My parents won it a number of years earlier, and I was thrilled to receive it. I think it's fair to say I received it with Emma. It's a team effort, and I do believe she's on there as well.
So where did the Silver Salver go in the house? Oh, did your drinks appear on it in the evening?
No, they didn't. It was, I think, probably on the sideboard more than anywhere else. Not something that we particularly used. Engraved with our names, obviously, on a long list. And now has been returned to the next recipient.
So, Pete, tell us about your meeting with Her Majesty.
It was the Queen's 150th year of being patron of the Thoroughbred Breeders Association. And we were invited, quite a few TBA members were all invited to St James's Palace, where the Queen was going to receive, I think, an object of, well, I can't remember what the object was now, but she was going to receive something from the TBA. And so we all went down to London, and this St James's Palace, we were all asked for our passports or driving licenses to gain entry. Everyone was asked for that, funnily, except for Willie Carson, because the guy on the door says, "I know you." He just walked in without ever producing his driving license, which I thought, that's when you've really made some fame, isn't it? And I managed to reside and hide my way right at the back of the hall, about as far away as I possibly could get from.
Well, with your height, that's quite tricky to hide.
I thought I'd manage. And there was ample amount of drink flowing. I think gin and tonic seemed to be the drink of the day. And I was happily passing away at the back when the doors opened behind me and the Queen entered right behind. I mean, there she was. So she took us all by surprise, and then she walked in, and I think it was, I was turned around, and all of a sudden, I think I was introduced to her. This is Peter Hockenhull, Shade Oak stud. Totally unprepared. Didn't have a clue what to say.
So you did a sweeping bow, and Emma in her new dress.
I did bow.
Perfect.
And then I did say something, because Her Majesty had sent a mare to Scorpion that year. And I was just telling her that unfortunately the mare had managed to lose her 28-day pregnancy, and that we were in the processes of trying to get her back in foal again.
Yes.
I don't think I mentioned anything else too untoward, but I have been known to wander off and start talking about mare's anatomy, which perhaps isn't conducive to talking to the Queen about.
All right.
But if you ask me exactly what I said, I can't remember really.
Yeah. Well, very exciting. And presumably Emma got a nice new outfit for the occasion, and you drank a lot of gin.
I drank too much gin. I'm not sure Emma did get the new outfit. And then we went off into London and tried to find a restaurant to eat afterwards, I remember.
Pete, it has been fascinating to hear about your royal connections. Do you have a saying or a motto that keeps you going when the sun isn't shining and things aren't always swimmingly at Shade Oak?
I think the one I'll be remembering, you get what you're given and you don't make a fuss, was always something that we bandaged around the dinner table, and doesn't seem to serve too badly as a life thing.
Brilliant. Fun fact, It's not only the horses. Her Majesty has always enjoyed pigeon racing. And on the animal front, she owns an elephant, 2 giant turtles, a jaguar and a pair of sloths, all of which live at London Zoo. As I'm sure our animal-loving listeners know, she also owns all the swans and the dolphins in the UK waters.
We have 2 swans currently grazing on our barren field, which have 3 little cygnets. And it's quite amazing to see how they're protected from the 20 or 30 horses which reside in the same field.
Pete, it's been great to hear about Dartmouth and Her Majesty's swans at Shade Oak. Thank you so much for sharing your stories with us.
It is clear from all 3 guests that Her Majesty has contributed enormously to the breeding, welfare and preservation of many bloodlines and our special breeds in this country, as well as being the figurehead for all our ceremonial pageantry from the Household Cavalry, for all our state events. For me, the vision of her riding Burmese for the trooping of the colour will always be the pinnacle of elegance.
At the age of 3, she was given her first pony, Peggy, by her grandfather, King George V, and her unwavering love of horses in so many different equestrian disciplines still continues today. Fun fact, Claire, did you know? She's the only person in the United Kingdom allowed to drive without a licence, and she does not require a passport.
And ever since the 17th century, a poet laureate has been part of the British royal staff, continuing with tradition. Queen Elizabeth's current poet, Simon Armitage, is paid in wine.
Definitely time to swap podcasting for poetry, in my view.